One of the key items President Biden said he secured during his trip to the Middle East this week was a commitment to open the Rafah crossing in Egypt. That's the one crossing that's not with Israel, to allow humanitarian aid to be sent into Gaza for the first time since Israel sealed the border. But the 20-truck convoy carrying medical supplies, food, and water will be delayed at least another day. According to U.S. officials, the highway has to be repaved before the trucks can cross into Gaza. And relief is desperately needed as the situation on the ground gets just grimmer by the day. Food, water, and electricity supplies were cut off nearly 2 weeks ago. And of course, the Israeli airstrike continued. Hundreds of displaced Palestinians were sheltering at the oldest Greek Orthodox church in Gaza when it was hit by an explosion late last night. The Israeli military said it had targeted a Hamas command center nearby. NBC News has not independently verified how many people died, but the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry said at least 18 Palestinian Christians were killed. Among them, according to former Michigan Congressman Justin Amash, were several of his own relatives who were sheltering at the church. Joining me now is Sari Bashi, Program Director at Human Rights Watch, based in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Sari, can you talk to us about, I know you've been doing a lot of work on this, about the situation in Gaza and what's needed?
The situation in Gaza is quite dire. There are severe shortages of food, water, fuel, and electricity. Hospitals are barely functioning. They're running out of medicine, and they don't have enough electricity to perform basic functions. People in Gaza are down to 3 liters of water per day for all uses, far less than the 50 liters a day that's determined as a minimum by the World Health Organization. And because the water has been turned off, they're resorting to drinking brackish or salty water, which is unsafe for human consumption. The cutoff of the clean water that used to come in from Israel and the fuel needed to power generators and the electricity needed to power generators means that also sewage cannot properly be treated. The wastewater treatment plants are shut down. Sewage is running in the streets. There are significant concerns about a humanitarian crisis based on an epidemic of disease, in addition to the more than 4,000 people who've been killed since the Israeli airstrikes began.
Just to be clear here, the fuel and water, there's probably no territory on Earth quite like Gaza. It's in terms of how and who controls it and how it's governed. It's inside is controlled and governed by Hamas, but they don't control the outside of the territory. What does Human Rights Watch believe should be done here?
So Gaza is about the size of Philadelphia. It's 2.2 million people, nearly half of whom are children. It's surrounded on all sides by fences, walls, and the sea, which is patrolled by the Israeli Navy. Water and electricity used to come in from Israel until 2 weeks ago when Israel cut off the taps. There's no reason that the Israeli government should not simply flick the switch back on and allow civilians in Gaza to resume drinking clean water and have the electricity they need to power it. It's an act of collective punishment to turn off the water and electricity and basically deprive children in Gaza of clean water. That's against international law. I'm concerned that the deal that Joe Biden brokered for 20 trucks to come in via the Egyptian crossing is painfully unambitious. There has been no talk of the need to simply turn the water and electricity back on to allow hospitals some modicum of ability to function, and no talk about reopening the crossings between Gaza and Israel for not just 20 trucks a day, but the 100 trucks per day that aid agencies have said is the absolute minimum for Gaza. In previous wars, brutal as they have been, the Israeli government has allowed trucks to come in through its own borders, which are much better established for that because of the dependence of people in Gaza on the Israeli crossings. And it has never cut water and electricity in this way during an active conflict.
I think if an Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson were sitting here, he would say something along the lines of, we've just suffered the most catastrophic violation of our sovereignty and security via those exact fences and border, and the security risk would simply be too high.
don't understand the security risk to turning the water and electricity back on. And the reason that people in Israel around the world are so horrified by the October 7 attacks on Israeli civilians by Hamas-led militants is because they targeted civilians. They targeted children. So the answer cannot be to then target civilians, target children in Gaza. Since the Israeli airstrikes began, more than 1,600 children in Gaza have been killed. We're talking about, on average, the Israeli military killing more than 100 children in Gaza per day. To in addition, deprive those children of food, water, electricity, and the fuel needed to power basic functions like the sewage system is not about defense. It's collective punishment. It's punishing children for the acts of adult fighters.
Can I ask you a final?
The U.S. government has sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask a final personal question. You're married to a Palestinian man. You're American and Israeli Jewish. You've sort of your household and life lives across this conflict. You live in Ramallah. What has the last 2 weeks been like for your family?
I live in the West Bank, and yes, it's been obviously very difficult. I think what's been heartbreaking is that the values that we try to impart to our children of universal respect for human life, for human dignity, that apply no matter who you are being flouted since October 7th. So the Hamas-led attacks that killed so many children, massacring civilians, took civilians hostage, were absolutely abhorrent. But the same people who deplore the murder and targeting of Israeli civilians, unfortunately, are not according the same concern for Palestinian civilians, and particularly the United States, which is so active in brokering these deals, has an opportunity to make a clear demand to the Israeli government to restore water and electricity supplies immediately and reopen its crossings to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. They've done it over fire in the past. They've done it in wars over the past. Sure. They can do it again, and that's what we need to protect civilians in Gaza.
Sari, Bashi, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.